So Noah, could you just start that from the top? The point is to teach our boys to be aristocracy, and you listed 3 criteria. What are they?
We need to teach our boys to be aristocracy. It means they need to understand the weapons that a man needs to be able to wield. The physical weapons, and those are the modern types of defensive weapons, they need to be able to wield the law. The law is a weapon. And they need to be able to also wield words or rhetoric. They need to be able to use words properly to accomplish their goal. And if a young boy can do these things, grows up to be a man, he has the potential to enter into an aristocracy.
Right. Now, aristocracy is important because what's the difference between paternalism and aristocracy? It's not that big a difference, but I think you've laid that out. So could you just sort of maybe touch on that?
So an aristocracy,
they're both responsibility, right?
Yes, yes. An aristocracy sees themselves as these are the individuals who through merit have become the best of us. It did in many cases become hereditary, but really what it means is the best of us. And you might be the best plumber, you might be the best lawyer, and you might be the best at something else, but you're at the top of your profession or your field. What's important about it is that you have a noblesse oblige, a noble obligation to help those who are beneath you, who can rise up to the aristocracy, to rise up, and those who can't, you need to protect them, sometimes from their own foolishness, but you need to protect them from the things they're incapable of protecting themselves from.
So in our historical tradition, each person could go to the manor, which would be either the nobility if they were state related or aristocracy if they were not. And realize there's levels in this thing too, right? But these are the people that have demonstrated intergenerational ability to maintain responsibility for the private and the common, right? So you could go to these people and ask for help.
Yes.
And they would help you. It was their obligation to help.
Yes, and what would happen, you would, if to say you're a young man, you would come and make your case, basically present your resume. I am a farrier. I know how to shoe horses, or whatever your trade was, whatever your skill was. And he would say to you, yes, I need that, or no, my neighbor needs that. Let me write you a letter of introduction to the neighboring manor and we'll send you over there. And then what would happen is your lord was responsible to make sure you had food, your children had food, you had shelter. He'd even help you find a wife, because their job was to ensure that you were happy enough that you wanted to stay there. We look at feudalism as if it was slavery, and that's not true. It was a system of protective welfare for a class of people that weren't able to maintain sovereignty on their own.
Right, and because of the inability of the European geography to centralize as could the river valley civilizations. All right, my whole point here was that, now can you tie this back to your beautiful witticism that you came up with in our earlier conversation, which is, how does that relate to Schrodinger's male, or Schrodinger's
Yeah. Schrodinger's male, men, when they're not being observed by women, behave as men. Or not. We don't know until if you're a man, you will know that. But if you're a woman, you can never see that behavior, because the moment that men know they're being observed, they stop acting like men and start acting like acceptable, civilized men for whatever your society accepts.
Right.
So women have never truly seen men and how they behave.
You mean the average contemporary woman that's alive today has really not seen men. And I think that's because men and women used to live very separate lives, except in the home, right? Yes. So go ahead.
There was a case of a woman who looked enough like a man. She dressed them up like a man and went and spent time with men. And she was absolutely shocked. She was so shocked about it that, unfortunately, when she went back to dressing like a woman again, it caused her depression, because she says the way men treat each other with both a roughness, but also care and affection, was so much more supportive than how women treated each other, that she couldn't go back to living as a woman again, because it was depressing for her to deal with other women, and she ended up killing herself.
Yeah.
So people don't realize that, men are hard on each other because we care about each other.
I was observing her while she was doing it because she gained instantaneous popularity, right, as soon as she came out with her findings. And now this has become something everybody quotes because it was so important. But, so what I wanted to get to, so the trick is that if we say that, I'm trying to tie what your bits of wisdom are together with my problem is, of course, is that the equality is actually treating women and men and women as equal instead of compatible, or actually opposites, has been a catastrophe, and that the degradation of our society is based primarily on this error. Go ahead.
It's completely destructive to women. Imagine you're half my size. You need an extra hour of sleep every day. You're disabled for 5 days of the month. And you're going to be disabled for maybe 8 to 10 years of your life having children, but you have to keep up with me in every single way.
And you can't regulate your.
Yeah, and you can barely regulate your emotions. You can, if you're doing well, you will notice that you can't do it.
Right.
That's enlightenment for women. And so by expecting them to do that, we're just not treating them fairly. It is
well, I think they don't treat us fairly either.
For women.
They don't treat men fairly either. They're expecting us to be women. And I was like, well, first of all, we don't have those feelings. We don't have those thoughts. And frankly, we don't have those abilities.
Yes.
Right? I mean, it's like one of the things that I always get to is that, I've made a lot of money hiring women because I know what they're good at.
Yeah.
Right. So if it's going to touch a customer and it's going to be about customer satisfaction, it's going to be understanding a customer. And I don't mean like in my little store here. I mean, when I'm dealing with projects and initiatives worth millions of dollars, I want a woman in there, but I want a man in there because a man can go in and say, no. Right. If a woman comes in and says, well, that's not going to work with her, you'll work it out with her. But when it comes down to conflict, we send the man in and men negotiate with, and it seems to work. So
women get far more out of men in their lives when they're feminine and soft and sweet than when they nag.
Right.
Because men are disagreeable. If you nag us, we're not going to do it just because you nagged us.
There's a term in psychology for it. Starts with R. It's not reactiveness, or it starts with an R. If somebody knows, put it in the comments. It's escaped me. But it means that they say it as men are more likely to be reactive. In other words, we have a very high intolerance for being told what to do versus being asked.
Yes.
So every time.
And if you're a man who doesn't have that intolerance, you will become completely unattractive to women.
That's right.
The more obedient men are, the less attractive they are to women. And the more that, as one of my friends said, she says, we just start to see those men as workhorses. We don't even see them as human.
Right. So to tie this back to your original, which I thought was which needed to be said, you're advocating that we train boys to be men, and by men to take responsibility for the common, the private and the common. But mostly what we're concerned about with aristocratic values is responsibility for the commons, right? And being capable by those means of exercise of force, basically, being able to judge the law, right, and apply it, and to use force precisely because you want them to be able to do so justly, to create the barriers in which other people can cooperate without having taking advantage of each other. So
if we do not give them a path to cooperation, we end up with frustrated young men. And those men do one of two things. They drop out of society. Right. They harm themselves, but they drop out. Yeah. Or they go to be extremely chaotically violent. And that this probably depends on their genetic predisposition. But neither of those are productive, and both are utterly destructive to our society.
Yeah, what do the Japanese call it?
I think it's called laying down.
Laying down.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's
I think that's what the Chinese call it. Actually,
the Chinese call it. The Japanese have another word for it, but it's basically it's basically exiting responsibility for anything, right? Everything and everything. Whereas what we're trying to
The
say
young
is,
men do that is the young men don't want to do that, but we've given them no path to take on responsibility. In fact, we've told them they don't even have any responsibilities anymore. You're completely useless. We don't need you. And
well,
so the rebellion to that is, okay, then I'm not going to do anything.
yeah.
And we have to make sure that young men understand the opposite message, and parents who can teach their children the path to responsibility, their children are going to be the ones on the next cycle that end up running things.
So let's, I don't like to tie into Peterson too much, but it's similar to it's a more adult version of his message,
Yes.
right? So
He was dealing with the most broken young men possible.
right.
And I'm saying you're probably not broken. You're just incomplete.
Yes,
Which
yes.
is very different. You need to finish your development, your maturing process, and everything becomes easier. And it's not that it becomes easier. It's that you become so much stronger that the burdens become a joy instead of a burden.
Yes. In other words, so I think the point I want to bring up is most humans are happiest at the edge of their competency,
Yes.
right? When they still have the opportunity to incrementally learn things, but they're not forced into a condition of failure.
Yeah.
Right? And so why are people fulfilled and people not fulfilled? Is because they are living and have lived their lives at that borderline, right? And so when you tell someone that they're not can't be a boy, remember the difference between men and women is I'm responsible for the commons for men, and I'm responsible for myself and my offspring, and maybe not even myself and my offspring, right? I mean, the whole difference is responsibility evasion because responsibility generates conflict for
Yes.
mediation of differences, right?
Also, for women, responsibility diminishes fertility.
Also,
The more things you're responsible for, the less children you can have. And historically, therefore, women who evaded responsibilities that weren't their children ended up with more children. So we're descended from those women.
So since the major difference is what we consider now, I would say when I say responsibility, I mean you're responsible for your children. That's still responsibility, but it's the difference between the private and the common, right? And the difference is a mother can mediate disputes between her children, which is why women tend to be more authoritarian, which they can't stand. Whereas men have to be more less authoritarian in mediation of disputes because you don't have any authority, you have only violence, and violence is dangerous. So the major difference being that we're trying to make it so that if you have the ability to be responsible, you're trying to make it, we are together, trying to make it so if boys and young men and men have the ability to be responsible, they will be fulfilled and they will stay invested in the society. Whereas if they don't have the ability to be responsible, they won't feel refilled and they have no need, they have no drive to participate in the advancement of society. And if nobody defends the commons, what happens? You don't have them.
Yeah. And I think the increase in depression in women and the hopelessness that women have comes from the fact that they look around at the young men out there. And I know this because they tell me, they look around at the young men and they say none of them are willing to take on the responsibility for a family. And that scares us because most women understand that they have a built-in genetic need to have children.
Yeah.
Men can go out and take on other adventures and create things in other ways, but for most women, children is the greatest thing that they can possibly do. If they can't do that, then we also have the women undermining society because
Which is
they
what's
don't have a
happening.
chance for kids, they're going to take it out on us.
Which is what's happening. I mean,
Yeah.
data is data. All right. Well, I started this out just wanting to cover your 3 insights into what we need to train. I mean, there's a whole book in that statement.
It's coming. It's coming.
Okay, so every time I talk to Noah, I was like, could you write another book about this? Because this is a good idea too.
Well, we're already right now, I'm consulting with wealthy families on how that they can go from being nouveau riche, new rich, to being aristocracy. Money does not make you aristocracy. Aristocracy is an attitude, and it's a way that you negotiate with the future. That changes whether you're aristocracy or not.
That's right. That's right.
And I can help you to develop that and create the legacy that allows your children in 2 or 3 generations to have a level of sovereignty you can't even imagine right now.
All right. Thank you for closing that beautiful discussion with that. All right, I'm going to end the recording here. This is no. I'm trying to. I usually say something silly like Lord Lord Chief Saint Noah Revoy or something like that. His Highness Lord Chief Saint Noah
My
Revoy.
actual title is Noah Revoy, as Revoy the Rey Dauphin. It's yeah, because I'm descended from French nobility, so that was
So
the last bit of the title I still retain.
I don't my people in France are from Normandy and they're responsible upper middle class people. And then in England, they're responsible middle class and upper middle class people. But the actual nobility I'm from is Scottish, which just is odd to me. I don't know why. It just seems so odd because it's really related to the Forbes, the Forbes
Oh
that
yeah.
man from. So in any event, what I was trying to say is this is Curt Doolittle from the Natural Law Institute with Noel Revoy from the Natural Law Institute. Lord Noah is a what do you call it?
I'm called a coach. It doesn't
Oh,
accurately describe what I do.
no,
There
no,
is
he's really he's a positive thing. A therapist is a negative thing, and he does the positive version of it, right?
someone described what I do as a shaman.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
help
Well,
people heal spiritually and practically as well.
and so he has a good business in that. He's an author of a couple of books, one of which we're working through right now, and another. I think you have another one in progress, don't you? Or almost?
Yeah, I'm working on a what should be a quick book right now on barbarian ethics. So,
Ethics.
how to derive ethics directly from
I
natural
remember
law.
when you came up with that idea. That was a great idea. All right.
Yeah.
And so we want to thank you for I meant this to be one of those shorts, but it's not going to be. Anyway, love you all. Thanks for following. Noah, love you, brother. Thank you. I'm just going to stop the recording.
Thank you.